slides. Just a second. All right, so today we are going to talk about building an equitable healthcare system through blood donations. My name is Teresa Pina. I'm the ADRP president, which is the International Association. It's more of the sister association to America's Blood Centers. My paying job is I'm the vice president of operations at Gulf Coast Regional Blood Center, which is located in Houston, Texas. I'm sorry, my slides are automatically advancing. I've been in blood banking for about 18 years, and I really focus on marketing, donor recruitment, mobile operations, and collections training. To give you a little bit of history about blood donations in the United States is really what I'm focused on today. This really started off during World War II, where civilian blood donors became necessary to ensure the safety of our nation. There were about 13 million pints of blood collected for war efforts. And really at this time, people felt like blood donations were not only a need, but they were an obligation to ensure that the nation had exactly what they needed. And so a lot of baby boomers grew up understanding that it truly was an obligation for their country, very much like voting. Now, in the United States, nearly 42,000 blood components are used by patients every day. When we talk about blood donors and we talk about who's eligible to donate, these slides are a little bit crazy. I apologize for this automatic advance. Of the US population, 62% of the US population is eligible to donate, or that's about 204.9 million individuals. But when we look at the gap, only about 7.3 million people donated in 2019. So on average, 3% of the population donates each year. Now, when we look at the ABC members, so America's Blood Center members, we have over 600 blood donation sites across the United States, and we account for about 60% of the US blood supply. American Red Cross accounts for the remainder of that. When we look at first-time blood donors, they're responsible for about 31% of blood donations in the United States, and then repeat donors account for the other 69%. Now, donors by gender, it's almost half and half. Males contribute a little more than half. But when we look at the age, you guys can see that with the age themselves, 25 to 64 really accounts for the majority of blood donors in our nation. We do see about 11% that are 16 to 18-year-olds. These are typically your high school blood drives. But once people get into college, that tends to fall off. We have seen about a 31% decline in people between the ages of 19 and 59, and growth has really been in the ages of 60 and up, which we'll talk about why that's going to be a problem in our future. When we get into minorities, so this is really African American, Pacific Islander, American Indian, and Hispanics. They account for 19.5% of blood donations for whole blood specifically. We'll also talk about why that number needs to be higher to ensure that we have an equitable healthcare system. When we look at blood recipients, every 2 seconds someone uses blood in the United States. And blood transfusions are very common. In patients over the age of 64, transfusions are going to rank as the second most common procedure. For patients between 45 and 64, it's the 5th most common. So we typically say transfusions and blood products occur between 3.5 and 5.1% of all hospital stays. Now, when we get into the type of people using blood, 25% of those the blood supply are for cancer patients. More than 1.9 million people are diagnosed with new cancer every year, and many of them are going to need blood transfusions to help with their chemotherapy treatment. They also need it because they're suffering with anemia, low blood counts. All of this is contributing to it's from chemotherapy and sometimes the loss that they have, a loss of blood in surgery. Now, sickle cell disease is a reason that we really need minorities to donate more blood. If you're not familiar with sickle cell disease, the red blood cells are hard and they're crescent shaped. This is a problem for oxygen being carried throughout the body. This occurs in about 1 in every 365 African American births and 1 out of every 16,300 Hispanic and American births. Now, sickle cell patients, they require regular blood transfusions throughout their lives, and this helps prevent like complications they may have, such as organ and tissue damage, sometimes severe pain, and even strokes. Oftentimes, sickle cell patients don't receive the level of care that they need due to the limited blood products that are available. And so when we're matching a patient and a donor specifically for sickle cell disease, there is a better compatibility when the patient receives blood from someone of the same race or ethnicity. And African descent are the best match for treating sickle cell disease. So blood transfusions really are the lifeline for sickle cell patients, and 1 in 3 African American blood donors are a match for a sickle cell patient. The other big use is going to be for trauma. In the United States, hemorrhage is the most common cause of death within the first hour of arrival to a trauma center, and more than 80% of deaths in the operating room and nearly 50% of deaths in the first 24 hours, they're really due to severe blood loss. Gunshot wounds are approximately 5 times more likely to require a blood transfusion. And then when you think about non-gun assaults, falls, stabs, motor vehicle accidents, all of those really put quite a bit of a burden on the blood supply because they use a lot of blood for just one patient. Transfusions are needed in 1 in 83 infant deliveries, which is pretty substantial when you think of all the babies that are born in the United States each day. And then on average, pediatric patients use over 652,000 units of blood annually in the United States. There are some topics of interest that I want to cover with you guys today. The main one, unfortunately, is acts of violence. In the United States, we've seen a number of, whether that's school shootings, acts of violence that occur in our community. And oftentimes people want to do something to help. And what they do is they go out and they want to donate blood because they're desperate to give back to the community. The problem with that is when people are victims in these acts of violence, the blood on the shelf is what is going to save their lives. So while we do have people coming in after as a reactive measure to an act of violence, it really is the blood that people donated yesterday, the day before yesterday, that are going to save those patients' lives, because it is a very lengthy process from the time someone makes a donation until the time it makes it to a hospital. It can take about 24 hours. Another topic, hot topic, is the LGBTQ plus donor eligibility. This one, if you were watching the news yesterday, we had some great news come across in the United States. So let me give you a little bit of history for the United States. This is different in every country, and it is changing pretty rapidly across countries around the world right now. But in 1983, during the heights of the AIDS epidemic, the federal government here in the United States issued a lifetime ban on blood donations from gay men. In 2015, that rule was replaced with a year-long abstinence requirement. And then in April of 2020, during the pandemic, the FDA revised that again and relaxed the abstinence requirement to about 90 days for gay and bisexual men. Now, in December of 2020, the FDA and 3 major blood centers in the United States launched a pilot to really understand and do a scientific study on the changing the donor eligibility for gay and bisexual men. And that is called the ADVANCE study. If you're interested in reading a little bit about it, I've included the link here. I encourage you to do that. Now, this slide, I had to update it this morning because we just received a draft guidance from the FDA yesterday. This is still a lengthy process, but it's definitely movement for us. The new policy is expected to really require the same risk assessment on all donors, no matter gender. It really checks the more of the risk assessment and sexual behavior of everyone. There's about a 60-day comment period where the public can ask questions. They can make comments on the standard. Then it goes back to the FDA for our final guidance, and then back to blood centers where blood centers can start making changes in their policy. So I would expect by the end of the year that we should see some change in the United States for blood donors. Now, there are ways that you can get involved locally. I would encourage you to educate your classmates, friends, family, even host regular blood drives with your community blood bank. Oftentimes, your community blood banks have resources and offerings for education, certainly like this, but certainly in your local community. And if you need help finding a blood donations location near you in the US, you can go to donatingblood.org. In the United States, once again, this is different internationally, but in the United States, you have to be 17 years of age, good health, and meet minimum weight requirements. And then you can donate about every 8 weeks. If you're interested in careers in blood banking, there are no shortage of careers in blood banking. I've included a few here, everything from more of the more scientific, more clinical side of blood banking, like blood bank technologists, genetic counselors, medical laboratory scientists and technicians, nurses, phlebotomists. But even on the other side of that, we have donor recruiters, so people that are out in the community setting up blood drives. We have marketing professionals, we have public relations. But we also have different disciplines like human resources. We have accounting. We're businesses within within the industry. And so don't overlook a career in blood banking. We are nonprofit organizations. It's a great world to work in if that's something that you're interested in doing mission work. We do mission work and we get paid to do it, which is fantastic. And you can give back to your community every single day. And I've also included references for the different statistics that I mentioned. Once again, these are all American statistics. There are other associations around the world that have very similar resources and statistics that are available. So that concludes the presentation that I have, but certainly eager to hear your questions so that I can answer those and give you some more feedback for whatever it is you're interested in.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm thinking right now, if anybody has any questions, quick questions for Teresa, go ahead and drop them in the chat. And then we can maybe deal with 2 to 3 and then move on to Mahitha's presentation on how youth can get involved in the blood banking industry. Okay, great. So does anyone here have any questions for Teresa? Maybe you're interested in a career in blood banking, or maybe you want to understand a bit more about sickle cell disease, for example. Does anyone here have any questions? Anything they'd like clarification on?
I just want clarification in terms of like when you're donating for blood, because my understanding originally was it was based off of the type of blood that you had, like type A or type O or something like that. So I was just curious why it was more about race when it comes to like sickle cell disease, if that makes sense.
Sure. So let me start back with all blood types are needed because we all have different blood types and there's compatibility when it comes to a blood transfusion. So generally there's a compatibility factor for every recipient of blood. But for sickle cell disease, one, because they're receiving a lot of transfusions over their life cycle. And when they start receiving all of these different transfusions, your body creates antigens and even antibodies. And so at that point, the compatibility starts to become more complicated when you're trying to cross match. And specifically for sickle cell disease patients, those individuals tend to have a better compatibility and match with donors of African descent. That's one of the only times where, and I hate to say it's not necessarily race or ethnicity, it does have to do with the descent, where they're from. And for whatever reason, that compatibility with those antibodies and antigens is a better match. That doesn't mean that like I can receive a blood transfusion from an African American. That happens every day. That's really the only time that ethnicity really comes into transfusion at all.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I was wondering if donating plasma is similar to donating blood and like if that's like related at all.
Okay, so there are two types of donations. One is donating for transfusion. So that's when you're going to go to your community blood center and you're going to make a donation and you're not receiving any compensation back. When you're going to a plasma center and you're donating your plasma, usually you'll see that they advertise they're going to pay you money for these types of donations. Those are for research and medicines. Those are what we would call big pharma in the United States. They're taking your plasma and they're not transfusing it because that's not the purpose or the use for that donation. They're using it to make pharmaceuticals. They're not bad. Both of them are needed in our medical community, but it's just a matter of understanding how you want to make an impact. Do you want to make an impact when you're talking about caring for somebody in need today? Or if you want to make an impact by donating your plasma to help with research and cures in the future. So we think of it from a care and cure perspective. You just have to decide what's important to you and make sure that you're well educated on where your donation is going, no matter where you're donating, to make sure that it matches really what your intentions were as a donor.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? I think we've got time for maybe one more before we move on to Mahitha. Okay, if not, maybe I'll ask one really quick.
Sure.
Maybe I didn't quite catch it fully in the presentation, but could you expand a bit more on how the importance of diversity in terms of age of blood donors?
Yes, and I apologize. I was moving quite quickly to stay within time. So when I talk about baby boomers have really grown up understanding that blood donations is something that is really more of a civic duty for them. They are becoming older and they're now becoming recipients of transfusions. And so they're not, well, they're on medications now that are starting to defer them from being eligible blood donors. So the big bulk of the population that are current donors today are aging out because of medication and their own transfusion needs. And in order to replace that and to maintain a stable blood supply across the nation, we have to replace that with a younger generation of blood donors. And what we're seeing is that the younger generation isn't responding at the same rate as their older generation counterparts. And that has a lot to do with time. It has a lot to do with if you haven't seen your family members, maybe you didn't see your parents donating blood, you didn't grow up in a time of war, you didn't really understand the ongoing need. Maybe it was just a lack of understanding that blood donations are needed. And sometimes we live in a world where, and you probably are familiar with this, with the organization you guys are working for, it's almost like we live in a world where people think somebody else will take care of that, so I don't need to. And we have to step up and say, I will help take care of this. I will help contribute and not wait for someone else to do that. And so that's what we were really trying to encourage young people to step forward and say, I can help fix this problem and not wait for someone else to do it.
Thank you so much. And I think that provides the perfect transition into our next presenter from ABC, Mahitha, who is, maybe you know what, Mahitha, I'll let you just introduce yourself, please, by all means.
Yes, of course. Let me just share my screen real quick. Okay. Where is this? Okay. Let's see. Second, actually. 1 minute, actually. Let's try this. Okay, here we are.
I think you might have cut out. Oh,
Am I
sorry.
cutting out?
You
How's
were
that?
for a second. You're good now. I think you're good.
All good? Okay. Good. Okay. Yeah, I've been working with America's Blood Centers since about April when I met one of their partners at a conference and spoke to me about the same things that Teresa just told all of you about, and the growing need for more blood donors, for youth involvement, for a new group of people to step up to help solve this problem. And so my main work that I do is volunteering for the veteran community here in my local area in DC and across the nation through a program called Student Leadership Council, also known as SLC. Right, so I'll just start by talking about how I got involved. Once I heard about this, I decided to host my own blood drives, and with SLC, we hosted over 25 blood drives across the country in the month of August. And that was a huge effort to put forward, but we saw great results. And I think this is something that everyone should try at least once, because the process, once you get started, there are a lot of resources out there to help you through it and know exactly what to do. It's not like a daunting process or anything in my experience. So it's very doable, and it feels really good to be able to give back like that. So overall, let's start with talking about what the SLC is. It's a student-led program that develops emerging leaders within the Veterans Affairs Department. It focuses on teaching student ambassadors through real-world experience, including the individual and national project. And by developing their leadership skills and providing opportunities to engage with mentors and other ambassadors from all across the country, the SLC aims to produce skilled volunteers who have a great appreciation for servant leadership and volunteering. So I think a lot of this aligns with those SDGs that you guys were talking about. It's a lot about giving back and like making the world a better place to be in. So as I was talking about the national project, that's specifically where the blood donation project came into hand. Every student not only completed their individual project, but had their own role in the national project to host their own blood drive. The SLC committed to helping solve the nationwide blood shortage in the United States and hosted blood drives throughout August. And our team of high school students, we worked with By Talent, American Blood Centers, and the American Red Cross to coordinate these drives all across the country. And like Teresa said, as the population of baby boomers age, there's a greater need for our generation to step up and become civically engaged. And this national blood drive is one of many examples of how us younger people, like myself and you guys, are able to step up to better the world and serve our own nations. So when hosting my blood drive, I was able to connect with people from my local or regional blood centers called Blood Bank of Delmarva, and they service the entire East Coast of America. And with that, we the steps that we took were just to locate a space that was large enough, because each blood drive has a minimum area that they need to set up all their equipment and to bring all their people in, and requirements such as that. So we chose a large-ish building. It was in the Veterans Affairs Center. And we had some volunteers, as you can see in this picture on the right. We had to recruit those volunteers and then focus on recruiting donors to come to the sign up to donate blood. And throughout all of that, you are usually connected with a representative that is able to guide you through the process, and they're able to check in with you and answer questions about what you're supposed to be doing. And I worked with a lot of different people on this, including Mr. Green and the people at the building, the people with the blood bank, people at my school. It was really important to reach out to people from all over the community and use like whatever resources you have available to make this known in your community. I found that a lot of people were not aware of the need for blood, and even just how during COVID, the need for blood grew even more. We saw that, and all of the news that came out around the time the blood shortage became a huge problem, but people somehow still didn't know about that. So even just educating them about that will make them want to give blood too. I saw that as we led our blood drives across the country, these are just a few of the locations. I don't have all of them on this map, but holding them at places like churches, other religious institutions, or centers, medical centers like the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in DC, whereas I did one, or over here they did a lodge, which is an Elks Lodge, which is just an area where it's a veteran organization meeting area. There's like a lot of areas that you can reach out to find a location that works for you. And there are a lot of people that are like willing to make things work to find a space that works for you once they understand like the implications of the project that we're trying to put together. So, oh wait, one more thing. I did find that my experience was really, it felt very large to me afterwards, because you don't feel like you're doing a huge thing, but then everyone comes together to give blood. And I saw that throughout the day. I saw how many of our people, like 30 plus people, come in to donate their blood, and we all had such a warm and like welcoming environment, and the staff are always very there to like make you feel reassured and answer any questions that you have. So everyone's very prepared for the process. And I think that I had a really good experience hosting my blood drive and also giving blood for the first time. And I would really encourage any of you guys to do it too. So at this point, we have some open forum discussion questions, but I would like to take any questions about hosting blood drives or my experience with this before we move into these discussion questions.
So with all of your work from encouraging blood donation, have you kind of had one big takeaway about the way that the system works, or about why people do or don't?
Sorry, you put out there at the end, you said why people do or don't
choose to donate their blood. What have you learned and taken away from all of these?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I think what I would take away from this is that a lot of it is not necessarily misinformation, but just a lack of information for people to understand, like Teresa said, like exactly where your blood is going, what is being done with it. I think there's a lot of fear surrounding that for some people. And like it was mentioned, like I didn't grow up in a time where it was pushed on me to like be like, this is something that I need to do, or really understand what blood donation was. But I think that was a large factor in why people didn't really donate blood that I knew. I think also I found that it was about like location, because I held two, and one of them was closer to my area and one was like a bit further. So it's like accessibility to reaching a blood donation center, and just being aware of that when you're also trying to host a blood drive.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
I'll jump on with a quick one of my own. So through these youth-led blood drives which you guys hosted, are a majority of the donors also young people, like other high schoolers, or did they include other members of the community, adults, stuff like that?
Yeah, of course. So we obviously took any donors that wanted to donate blood, but a main focus of our project was to engage this new generation and really work towards the problem of having more donors within the younger age range to help mitigate the like effects of the older generation not being able to donate as much blood anymore. That was definitely a huge part of our initiative.
I have
Gotcha.
a quick question.
Yeah.
So with the eligibility to give blood, what would you recommend someone to do if they can't give blood but would still like to be part of this movement?
I would say to host a blood drive, there's no requirement to of age or any medications that you can or can't be on to host a blood drive. It's all about using your connections and the people that you know and letting them know about this amazing opportunity to do something good just with 30 minutes of their day.
And if you don't mind, I'll add every blood center across the nation and even probably in internationally have volunteer programs. There's a lot of volunteer work that can be done within a blood center. So let's say you don't have the capacity to host a blood drive, but maybe you would be interested in going and working at a blood drive and volunteering your time to talk to people that are walking by about a blood donation or helping them make their appointment, that type of thing. Contact your local blood center and they can certainly tell you what all the volunteer opportunities are.
Thank you.
Also, just a bit of a follow-up question. So with these youth-led blood drives, who actually administers the, I guess, the blood collection process? Like, is it also like you and other high school volunteers who would be administering these?
No. So you communicate with the blood center, and my blood center, Blood Bank of Delmarva, they sent down a team from Delaware. They drove down and set up all their equipment. They did all the transportation and all of the collecting. And then we just had to like provide the space and provide the donors and communicate about like the building management to make sure that all this was okay and things like that. But as far as the actual medical side of it, it's done by professionals from a qualified team that come down to meet you.
And if you're
That makes-
unfamiliar or maybe you're scared, like, I don't really know how to do all, Mahita did a great job, but let's say you're like, I don't really know how to do all of this stuff. Every blood center has a professional, they're called donor recruitment professionals, and they'll teach you how to do everything that Mahita is doing. Until you feel comfortable, and they kind of step back after they've taught you everything there is to know. Like they'll give you a whole a checklist of, okay, you need to find a room that's this size. The room also has to, you know, have a temperature between this and this. And here's how you're going to sign people up. Here's marketing materials that you can use. So there is someone who can help you do all of the pre-planning before the team of professionals come in to do all the blood collecting.
Gotcha. Thank you for all the information. So does anyone else want to jump on with more questions, or then we can move on into the open forum discussion? I thought I heard a mic there. Okay, I guess we can kind of move into the open forum discussion here. So I guess the first question is, has anyone here donated blood before? I'm guessing most of the people who can answer yes are probably about like juniors or seniors, if not university students, but we'd love to hear if you've done this before and you can share a little bit about your experience. Or maybe before that, if you're not quite comfortable unmuting yourself and talking, maybe just by show of hands, how many people here has actually donated blood before? You can use the raise hand function on Zoom. Okay, I guess this is a bit surprising, but no one has done it, which all the more means that this is hopefully inspiration for you if you're, you know, of the right age and of the right health to be able to do this. Hopefully today's events inspires you, as it has inspired myself, to go and donate blood sometime in the future. So I guess that's question one answered. So number three maybe might be more answerable for those of us who haven't donated blood yet. So if you do plan on donating sometime in the future, why are you motivated to do that? Personally, it's the idea of just being able to help people who are in need. Especially, I know we tend to be quite reactionary as a society with, like, for example, the shootings that Teresa brought up, how they always seem to be followed by a spike in donations. And it's just a fundamental motivation, people feeling motivated to want to help. And I'm kind of inspired by the same sentiment. So that's my personal rationale for donating blood. But what about you guys? If you guys plan on donating sometime in the future, what's making you commit to that?
For me personally, I've seen my mom donate before to blood donation when I was younger. And I think my school has done blood donations before in the past. I just never really knew much about it outside of seeing those few examples in seeing those few examples. But I'm really glad that I got to see this presentation because I do think there's a lot of misinformation about blood donation, and I think a lot of the fear, I think, is just what you both addressed earlier is like what's going to happen with the blood and like even like the process of getting your blood taken out of you. I guess like I think for some people inspires some fear, so I'm really glad that hearing this presentation and learning more about that process. And I think it's inspired me in the future to definitely, once I'm old enough, to donate blood.
Yeah, I kind of want to add on to Ayomide. I think this presentation really helps kind of help me understand a little bit more about the process. In Taiwan, we have a lot of these buses. They're actually stationary outside of a lot of hospitals or a lot of medical centers. And I often pass by them, but I just don't know what's going on inside these buses. And so I think it's really cool to really understand this. I'm going to be really honest, but I think I have like a bit of a fear of needles. But I think with COVID vaccines and everything, I know it's a different kind of placement of the needle, but I think with the COVID vaccines rolling in, people are a little less afraid of needles, and I don't know. I think that might help a little bit more with the fear of needles. But I think this presentation really helped me kind of understand more about the process. So thank you so much.
Ivan, I want to talk a little bit about the fear of needles because that's one of the common things that we get when we ask people about donating blood. But I will be honest with you, even blood donors hate needles. Like nobody really likes them. I will say that for the most part, once the needle is in, it's only in your arm for about 7 to 9 minutes. It's rather quick. When you're donating, it's going to be in the middle of like where the fold in your arm is. So not where you received your COVID vaccine. I will say like it really is nothing, but certainly the anxiety of not knowing because you've never done it before definitely contributes to that fear factor. But I encourage you to give it a try. If you've ever given like a blood sample for any medical purposes, it's about the exact same thing. We just take a little more blood than your blood samples. I'll also say that your blood replenishes itself within 24 hours. It's about 500 mLs that we take when you give a whole blood donation, and by tomorrow, the volume is back in your body. The reason you have to wait about 8 weeks is because we want to make sure that your body has replaced the iron that is inside your body, because when we take a unit of blood, we're also removing some of the iron because the iron is on that red cell. So we want to make sure that you're not depleting your iron stores because your body needs that. We don't ever want to put a blood donor into an anemic state. So that's why we say every 8 weeks, because we're certain by 8 weeks that your iron stores are back where they need to be. But we know within 24 hours, your volume is where it needs to be.
Thank you.
That's very interesting. Also, I've been talking about what the experience kind of looks like in Taiwan. Made me kind of curious. So for those of us, I know that there are a bunch of us from other countries here, like Egypt and India, for example. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you don't feel comfortable unmuting, just feel free to share via the chat box. But we'd love to hear what the process looks like in your country. Or if you've known people who donate blood where you're from, and what motivates them to be a donor, what the process is like for them. So either way, we'd love to hear from you guys. in the meantime, if people are taking the time to type out their response in the chat box, what about number 5? Does anyone know anybody who's a blood donor? Or I guess maybe even plasma donor as well, people who are in that kind of, I guess, what you would call it, people who are basically interested in donating their blood or plasma. If you know anyone like that in your family, your friends, can you share anything about that story? What motivates that person to donate?
So I don't know anyone who's personally been impacted by a blood donation, but I do know quite a few blood donors. My school holds a blood donation drive every year, so I've been involved in that the last couple of years, even though I haven't been eligible to actually participate because I don't meet the age requirement yet. But it's a really cool experience. So usually like a couple of weeks before we'll start advertising, and it's just so amazing to me to hear that like that each blood donation can save up to 3 lives, and that's how we would go around promoting it. And it actually sparked a lot of interest within the students at our school, because a lot of people really want to make that difference. And then the day of the blood drive, I couldn't give blood, but I was there, and I was providing snacks and water to the students once they finished their donation. And it was very inspiring to see all of these young people who wanted to make a difference. And I think it's really cool to see how my school has held these blood drives to kind of inform students about how we can get involved and how we can make a difference at a young age. Because oftentimes I think in this youth are typically not given this type of opportunity to help others, and it's very cool.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing, Catherine. Probably personally sometime in a distant memory where I think I've known somebody or witnessed like a blood drive happening in my community of some kind. But it's not something I've really given much thought recently until, we had this workshop and this project. So once again, want to thank Teresa and Mahitha for sharing your knowledge with us and experiences. We greatly appreciate it. Oh, and I want to quickly address Martina's comment in the chat box. I don't know, you can donate blood at our local hospital, but usually around Christmas, a blood mobile comes around to charity events and sometimes to our school, and parents and family and friends are able to donate blood. So yeah, I think this whole kind of idea of using buses seems to be a pretty common thread. So that's very interesting. And Martina, can you share which country you're from? Oh, okay, you shared it earlier. You're from Egypt. So I guess Egypt also kind of follows a similar model of having mobile blood donation centers, which is very cool. Does anyone else want to share? Feel free to just jump on mic, or if not, type it out in the chat box.
At my school, I know we had a blood drive last year, and I think the student who like introduced it or like set it up, I think either he was like battling with like a disease that like needed blood transfusions, or he like knew someone who was, I don't exactly remember, but like I'm not eligible to donate yet at my school, but I felt like that was really powerful how he like shared like a personal experience, and I think it really motivated other people to want to donate more. So yeah.
I'll also encourage you all to look at your community blood centers scholarship programs. Oftentimes, blood centers offer scholarships to young blood donors to help pay for their tuition. So look for your local community blood bank, go to their website and see if they have any scholarship opportunities for you.
That's a really cool opportunity. Wasn't aware that that was something that existed. So I guess hopefully that motivates you even more to donate blood if that's something you've decided to do. Okay, so I think we're nearing the top of the hour here. And unless I'm just going to quickly open the floor, any last comments, anyone wants to jump on the mic, please by all means go ahead. And then if not, we'll kind of move to begin closing our workshop for the day.
And for hosting this workshop. I think it's very difficult to not know that blood donation makes a big impact, but I didn't really understand the extent and the urgency of blood donations until your presentation. I didn't understand just how wide scale this impact can be and how quick this impact can be, how many people it can help. And I really appreciate I really appreciate you sharing that with us. I, like Ivan, would say that I've feared blood donation for, I've only been eligible for a few months, but I feared it at the opportunities that I've had. But this really makes me want to look into it, and I'm absolutely going to be taking a look at opportunities to donate blood now. And I really, really appreciate you guys presenting this. It motivated me a lot, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely agree with that. Thank you so much once again, Theresa and Mahitha. By the way, since we're about closing, I know this is US specific, but if you guys have any links and resources you can drop for us in the chat, like for example, how to get involved with SLC, I think that'd be great because we have a bunch of US participants here who'd love to have some of that information.
Yep, I'll get that right now. I'll drop it in the chat before we sign off.
Also, you're sharing your screen right now, Mahitha. Not sure if you're. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for that. Okay, guys, I just dropped. Oh, did I? Here. If you're interested in joining SLC, we do a lot of cool projects just like this, and we're hoping to do blood drives again this year. If this is something that you're also interested in, you can apply using the link that I dropped in the chat, and I'm sure we'd love to have you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, thanks, Jeff. Okay. All right. So in the chat, we've got a bunch of great resources, whether you're interested to donate blood or interested to join the SLC and help facilitate some of those youth-led activities. So if you're interested, if you're an American student who's interested, by all means, check out those, get involved. And, you know, this is what Mun Impact does. We connect students with their potential interests and show them things that they otherwise might not have been aware of through workshops and opportunities like this. So once again, we're very glad to be able to do this for our community, the North American team, which helped make this happen. Thank you so much, Ryan, Catherine, Vivian, all the other NA team members. This could not have been possible without you guys. So yeah, and thank you, of course, to our presenters once again, Theresa and Mahitha. Appreciate you guys coming here and sharing your knowledge and insight. Okay, I think to close very quickly, if you guys are comfortable turning on your cameras, we can take a quick screenshot of the event, and then we can end things for the day. So if you're comfortable, just please quickly turn on your screenshot just for your camera just for a couple seconds, and we'll get a quick screenshot for our promotional materials. It's great to see everyone. Okay, Just a quick countdown, 3, 2, 1. Awesome, thank you so much. Any last comments, Teresa and Mahitha, before we end for the day?
Thank you for having us. There's a critical need for blood donations right now, so go out and find your blood center and make that first donation.
For sure.
Yep, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
We're good for today. Thank you so much for coming. The recording will be available on YouTube shortly if you're interested in rewatching or not sharing that. So yeah, thanks for coming. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.